Welcome to Life Ablaze. So my guides have been sending me the message for today in little bits and pieces while I was making breakfast and all these other times that I wasn't actually taping. So basically, I'm going to get out of the way here and let them give to you what they are basically chomping at the bit to communicate. So here we go. We are here. We welcome you. We are here to discuss the idea today of identity, the story of you. There is many different ideas in terms of what you all in your physical reality consider to be your identity. The most popular idea in this respect is the idea that you are the collection of your own experiences. And while the collection of your experiences is most certainly valid, we would very much disagree in terms of that being the totality of your identity. Because what you have considered to be your identity is an extremely limited story. And to illustrate this point, we are going to utilize something that exists in your reality, a series of books for younger readers entitled Choose Your Own Adventure. In this series of books, there is a series of choices that you as the reader, and frequently the main character, must make throughout the story. And when you make these choices, the story will turn out differently. So let us explore this idea a bit. Were you to purchase one of these books in this series, and you were to hold this book in your hands, you would perhaps notice that it has a certain number of pages. Let us say arbitrarily that this number is 375 pages. Let us say that it is a large book in terms of this particular series. Now, when you begin reading the book, you will find that after a few pages, a decision point is presented. And you, as the reader, must decide, will I choose option A? Will I choose option B? And sometimes there is even an option C. Now, were you to choose option A, you would turn to a specific page further on in the book. And that, based on your decision, would continue your story. And you would find, after a couple more pages or so, you would come to yet another decision point. And your story would continue in this way. Now, for those that believe that your entire identity is based upon the experiences that you've had, or in this metaphor, the choices that you make in the story, you would find yourself, before too long, at the end of the story, and that there would be a very large book in your hands, and you will have realized that you have only read a very small percentage of the pages. Then you may find yourselves going back to previous decision points and exploring what would my story have been like if I had chosen option B or option C? And where would my story have led at that point with that decision? In many cases in these stories, you may find yourself looping back onto certain thematic elements. You may find that making a decision for option B may lead you back around to that same point again where you would have chosen option A. Now, for clarity's sake, we will set this aside for a moment and explore something a bit bigger in terms of this idea. And that is, you are still holding a book that is 375 pages long. And no matter how many retraces you may have had, you may have decided to go back and do, it is highly likely that there are still some pages, some bits of story that you have not found, that you have not personally experienced, and yet still exist within the book in your hands. And so, what we would say to you is that what you know of identity, what you believe yourselves to be, the story that you are telling yourselves as to who you are, is only one series of choices within this book. One short stream of singular decisions that leads to a certain point. But what we are saying, what we are suggesting to you, is that you are not the series of choices that you have made. You are the book. And we would say this: 375 pages does not begin to cover it. Your War and Peace would be considered an index card compared to the story that is you. Your own Encyclopedia Britannica, in all of its volumes, would be a pamphlet compared to the true story of you. Now, what do we mean by this? We mean that there are infinite parallel realities that are part of who you are. There are experiences that are, in essence, laid out for you in a similar structure to the Choose Your Own Adventure book. And what you choose to experience is your free will chosen experience of this particular life. But the choices that you make do not mean that these are the only choices, that this is who you are. This is not the case. This is the limited understanding of yourself reflected in the choices that you have made. We will say this again. The identity that you are, that you know yourself to be, in many cases, is the reflection of the experiences that you have chosen in this physical life, many of which have been unconscious or unintentional. And we have other videos discussing these ideas. But this particular one is of the idea that you can make other choices because they already exist. They are already there. In essence, waiting for you to choose them. There is an option B for you. There is an option C. There are infinite options available to you. There are perhaps hundreds of options available to you in any particular choice point scenario. And each one of them leads into a different experience of that which you are. But if this is possible, then you cannot be the limited definition of the experiences that you have chosen in particular. Because if that were all that you are, there would be no other choices. You would simply navigate down the seemingly only path that there is. But you know this is not the case. You make myriad decisions every single day. Now, many of you make many of these decisions from a perspective that you are a certain type of individual. You are, in essence, connected, invested, and attached to the identity that you have observed through your previous choices. And so you believe yourselves to be, to some extent, this limited version of you. But you are not this limited version of you. This is a very narrow perspective in terms of self-awareness and self-identification. Now, we are not saying that there is not value in the choices that you make. We are not saying this at all. In fact, the purpose of your life here is to have the experiences that you choose. And so this is a very joyful, exciting thing to be able to choose between all of the array of choices available to you at every single choice point moment in your lives. But what we are here to point out to you is that the array of selections available to you is vastly more diverse than you would seem to believe, than you would seem to give credit to. And much of this is due, again, to you identifying with the limited identity. You are telling yourself the limited story about who you are. You are buying into this story. Now, many people, of course, in the physical environment, want to quantify you, want to give you a label so that they understand you. Some might say that the channel is that guy that channels. This can be one label. And for those outside of him or his social circles, may easily quantify him with this label or box. And that is their right. But if the channel were to decide that this is all that he is, then he would drastically limit the choices that he would perceive in terms of what other directions he may choose to go, or what offshoots of this identity he may experience. And so it is with you. And so, understand that your society and the way that it is structured through a, shall we say, mental paradigm likes to quantify and label things in its compartmentalized structure. But again, you are not a compartment. And your identity is much more malleable than you believe it to be. And you are much more expansive in terms of all of the available experiences that are ready for you to choose if that appeals to you. Especially, and we want to lean on this point a bit to really drive the point home. The deeper that you allow yourselves to view the unknown, let us say a whole array of choices that veer the story off in a completely new direction that is perhaps unfathomable to the identity that you are currently operating within, the more that you embrace the idea of this unknown, the more exciting and varied experiences you will have. The more limitless you will feel, and the more in alignment with your higher mind you will become. Because you are limitless. And the experiences that are available to you are equally limitless. And so be careful in choosing an identity, identifying with a story of yourself that keeps you within a narrow window of expressions and limiting yourself from what is possible for you to have, to be, and to do. We thank you for this opportunity to share this message with you today, and we look forward to speaking with you again. Until next time. Thank you so much.